Bonjour, today we're going to learn about a new type of verb, and these are called regular ER verbs. So we learned about être before, and that was very specific, where the way that you conjugate that one verb only applies to that one verb. But today we're learning a way to conjugate a certain type of verb that will apply to a lot of different verbs. So it's really important to understand this because it helps you get a lot out of French. So to start with, it may seem obvious, but just so that we're all on the same page, what is an ER verb? An ER verb is any verb that ends with the letters ER. There are a few that are irregular, but for the most case, they are regular. So a few examples that we have are right here. You don't need to write every single one of these down, but you will need to know the vocabulary. So if it helps you to write them down, go for it. If it helps you just to write down a few for now, go for that. Some of them are pretty obvious. Arriver, to arrive. Commencer, to begin, that's similar to English commence. Détester, to hate, similar to English detest. But there are two that I want to draw your attention to because these are very easily confused. Travailler, it sounds like travel and it looks like it, but it really means to work. The word for to travel is voyager, so it's a little bit different, so you want to pay attention to those. So we have adorer, aimer, aimer mieux, arriver, chercher, commencer, dessiner, détester, donner, étudier, habiter, manger, oublier, partager, penser, regarder, rencontrer, retrouver, travailler, et voyager. So what do we do with those? If you keep the ER verb in its original form, so if you leave the ER at the end, it is an infinitive. And we've already talked about an infinitive is the complete form of the verb. That's the equivalent in English of the verb with to in front of it. So for example, aimer, when you keep the ER at the end, that means to love. And oublier means to forget. So we have to conjugate them to make them work with a subject. Because you can't say I too love, or we too love, or she too loves. You have to get rid of the to, and in French that's what we call conjugation, or in any language that's what we call conjugation, but we're learning this specific way for French. So for example, instead of aimer, you change it to j'aime for I love, and j'oublie for I forget. So it's important that the ER at the end means that it will not match with a subject right away. So you have to figure out how to conjugate these. 2 steps, that's it. You drop the ER from the end of the verb, and then you add the appropriate ending for each given subject. So, if you have an ER verb, and you're conjugating it for je, you drop the ER and you add back an E. So that's like our last slide where we said j'adore, A-D-O-R-E. That's why it looked that way for je. For tu, for you drop the ER and you replace it with ES. For il, elle, or on, so he, she, or one, you drop the ER and add an E. For nous, for we, you drop the ER and add an ONS. For vous, which means you in an either formal situation or in a group, you drop the ER and you add EZ instead. And for il or elle, for they, you drop the ER and you replace it with ENT. So it's very important that we remember these 6 endings. So je is E, tu, ES, il, elle, on, I, nous, ONS, vous, EZ, il, elle, ENT. Let's practice a little bit. Comment dit-on she speaks en français? So the first thing that we need to figure out is the vocab word for to speak. And we saw on the slide earlier, to speak is parler. And then we remember our first step, we drop the ER, we get rid of that. Because if we leave the ER, that means it's in the infinitive. And so we need to drop the ER to make it work with a subject. So the first part, we drop the ER. And then because we have the word she, we'll remember that she, en français, ça c'est elle. And then we remember we have the ER drop, but for il, elle, and on, what do we add back? We just add an E. So to say she speaks in French, because to speak is a regular ER verb, we know that it will be elle parle. That means she speaks. In French, that can also mean she is speaking. In English, we have 2 different ways of saying she speaks or she is speaking. In French, there's just one way to say it. Let's do another one. Comment dit-on we hate en français? So just like the last example, the first thing we need to figure out is how to say to hate en français. And ça c'est détester. Ça c'est l'infinitif. That's the infinitive. And then remember that step one is always to get rid of the ER. Then we need to remind ourselves how you say oui en français, and that means nous. And then we have to remember the ending to add back. So for nous, the ending that we add back is ONS. So we'll add ONS where we chopped off the ER, and it will be nous détestons. Great, last practice. This one's a little bit different. It's important to remember. Comment dit-on I love to draw en français? This one's a little bit more complex because we have two verbs here. We have love and we have draw, but since they are both ER verbs, we know how to do it. So we're reminding ourselves that to draw in French is dessiner, and to love in French is aimer. So we have our vocabulary, now we just need to figure out what to do with it. The interesting thing here is we have to draw. We have the entire thing here. So whereas love is different than to love because the to is missing, in to draw, it's an exact match to the definition of dessiner. So that means we're not going to change anything with dessiner. We leave the infinitive. However, because we don't have the infinitive for love, we're again going to cross out the ER, and we know that aimer is the verb that we need to conjugate now. So we're going to have je, and then we're going to have to conjugate love and draw. So we have j'aime dessiner. How we got there? I is je. Love, we need to conjugate aimer for je, so we cross out the ER, and we add back this E. And to draw is in the infinitive, so we just put dessiner there at the end. Ça c'est la fin. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we'll be practicing a lot in class.